All right, so this is going to be a situation update where I'm going to talk a little bit about the global situation and also about my own situation. Because it's been almost 2 years now since I went through my ET/higher mind core issues, cleansing, healing experience. And it's been a lot of integration and it's been a process. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how that's been and how it's now. But let's start with the global situation, because I believe a lot of people are confused about the whole QAnon Trump movement that sort of it fizzled out into nothing. Trump is almost gone from the world stage because he's banned from social medias, but he's starting his own, and QAnon basically stopped posting for a good while ago, so not much is coming from that. But I can see now that the whole movement was basically about two things mainly. It was about exposing major truths to a large number of people who was not into these things before, because that would be enough to make them all question reality, and that's, put them on a different trajectory and a different path instead of just being stuck in their old worldview. And it was also very much about forcing the end game, because now when Trump won and when QAnon started leaking information and the whole movement came about, the global cabal elite people, they obviously panicked and they had to go more drastically into the end game than they hope to do at this point. They had to release the virus and all that and basically go all in. So now they are exposing themselves every day by doing it this way, and they're not really succeeding because some countries have gone all in on the totalitarian agenda, like Australia, for example, but many countries are not done that, and it's a lot of people are waking up that wouldn't even wake up from the QAnon movement are now waking up because they see what they see, and they have the knowledge they have, like doctors and health workers and military people, all sorts of people. I know, so the world has turned into a massive, the world has always been like a big karmic washing machine, and made different programs. But now it's gone into a very, a very rough program, you might say, that's waking up a lot of people at the same time. Basically the whole globe is going into the same program. And it's been interesting to see how it's affecting everybody. People you wouldn't believe would ever think about these kind of things, and now suddenly you see them question all sorts of stuff, and it's waking people up for sure. But the most important is that it initiated the end game. So now these global cabal people are expending all their ammo, all their ammunition, all their momentum is being used up as we as light workers are holding the space by keeping the mass consciousness relatively high frequency. All this negativity, all this craziness can play out on the world stage without humanity self-destructing. That's the big service you provide just by existing and keeping your vibration and level of consciousness as high as possible, is that you're actually holding the space so the planet doesn't go into self-destruct mode, which would have happened if this played out on a planet with a much lower frequency mass consciousness. So that's basically the number one job, is just to keep your own frequency high and do what you like to do, do not be dragged into the chaos and focus too much on the negative. It's okay to follow world events, and of course, but you have to get rid of the sense that you are here to save the world, the dying old world, or anybody. That attachment is better to let go of at this time and practice allowance, allowing things to happen. Because nobody is here to save the dying old. It can't be saved anyway. We are here to at some point completely turn the other way and build something completely new. as the old collapses. It's the old phoenix bird myth, basically on a global scale. So the old is dying, the old phoenix bird is crashing, and the new is rising from the ashes of the old. But the old has to crash completely first before we can really step into that role of starting to build something completely new. And that's probably going to happen in the next 2-3 years. I don't know. We're going to start on that agenda. But maybe it's better to look at your life instead of feeling that you're one small, person on a big planet. You just see that you basically are tunneling through frames. Your whole life is like going through a roller coaster ride in a theme park. You experience ups and downs and scary parts and beautiful parts and all sorts of things, and it's all just a ride in a tunnel full of frames that you experience. And at some point you come out on the other side. And that's the whole Ascension question. How is it going to happen? Are ETs going to physicalize and come down and be physical like us and live among us, and or are we actually going to get into a completely new reality? And as far as I can tell from what Bashar has hinted to many times or several times, it's what's going to happen probably at least 10 years down the road, maybe a little bit more. What's going to happen is that at some point the people who are ascending are going to just fall asleep, which means their physical body is probably going to die. It's not going to be relevant anymore, and you're just going to wake up in a dream reality. And at first, the dream reality is going to feel like a dream, but it's going to physicalize a bit more and become more like a halfway world between what used to be the physical world and what used to be the dream world. So it's a blending of the two, and after a while of getting used to that, it's going to be like a new physical reality, but less physical than what you're used to from this reality. That's what Bashar has hinted to, but he doesn't really go into detail or talk too much about it. But I've heard him say it a few times, and that's how it happened for them, apparently, when they ascended. So with that in mind, you don't really have to think that you are going to save the world, the physical world, and all that. You're tunneling through the frames you need to tunnel through to get to the point where you actually fall asleep and wake up in a new more energetic fourth density body, in a fourth density blending of the physical and the dream reality. So with that in mind, you don't have to worry so much, because you're not really here to, many people think they're here to save the physical world and save people and all that, but not really. The best way to save yourself is to keep working on your own consciousness and mind, and letting go of negativity, and that's the best you can do. So I don't see how it could work any other way, but before that happens, that's a long time, 10 years down the road and maybe more. That's a long time when so much craziness is going on right now. So what about now? What about the next 3, 4 years, 5 years? Well, I still think that as all the momentum is being used up by the dark cabal people with all the totalitarian stuff they're trying to do, and they're exposing themselves more and more, I think there's going to be a big awakening also before we ascend into a different reality. It's going to be a big movement, a big kind of renaissance, that so a lot of people are going to basically start to create a whole new, much more positive reality in this physical realm too. And a lot of people are going to become teachers and step into all sorts of roles that they have come here to prepare to do and been preparing for their whole life. And that's going to play out for a while before we can reach the point where we can actually physically leave this realm and go into the 4D. bodies, but I can't tell exactly when and how that's going to work. But I just have to, consider that what I went through healing my core issues. If people don't do the same, enough people, that's super important as far as I can tell, because you have to get enough people unplugged from the matrix, and the only way to do that is you have to get rid of the core of the ego and the negative ego, and that's done by healing the core issues. And when enough people do that, you sort of create a hole in the whole matrix system. A big hole is blown wide open, and it sort of unravels the whole matrix system. So that's what I think is the event. The event is not when we ascend. The event is when the mass consciousness is unraveled and boosted into unconditional love by enough people healing their core issues. This is also how it was done, as far as I know, in the Orion Empire, which is a million-year-old. Many millions of years ago, there was a big totalitarian empire, and the Earth game is basically the karmic wrap-up of that energy. And I read some channel material from that time, and I also listened to Bashar talk about it. And basically there was a big rebellion that went underground for many long time. They fought fire with fire and tried to, rebel against the totalitarian regime, and didn't work. Everything just went on and on for a long time, until they changed tactics, because they had some incarnations, some high priests and high-level people who made them change their tactics, so that they started working on themselves much more and grow in spirit and get into unconditional love and higher levels of consciousness. And when enough people did that in the underground resistance movement, it created a big rift in the whole matrix system of the Orion system, and that's when everything started to change and unravel, because they did that. They had that effect on the mass consciousness. And I see the same thing probably is how it's going to happen here, even before we ascend into non-physical or into 4D, 4 density. We're going to have the event, which is going to be that kind of situation where the whole mass consciousness is unraveled, and unconditional love becomes the new norm level, kind of the mass consciousness level. And that's going to change the physical too a lot, the physical 3D reality a lot, before we actually a certain percentage ascend. And by being here and doing the service that we do as higher level people, we also are lessening the impact and negativity that these regular people who are more native to this third density reality would have to experience if we didn't do that service. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk a little bit about my own situation. So it's been 2 years, as I said, since my ET, higher mind, eye of the needle cleansing, core issue healing experience, which you can listen to my wild story about. I tell the wild story in a couple of other videos, because that was quite a wild ride, to say the least. And the days after I had went through that healing, I was squeaky clean. Like I was completely, it felt like you've been through a car wash, only internally. Like you are completely cleansed out. And I was stripped down to basically the fear of death. Everything else was removed as I was taken up on the UFO and down and up to be exposed to these very high frequencies. But after a few days, you're sort of swimming in this mass consciousness anyway. So you sort of, things come back. You can be squeaky clean, then you go down in the sewer again, and you get dirty, kind of. you attract, your system is filled up with the dirt from the mass consciousness. And also, I wasn't completely cleansed. I was healing 2 core issues, which had to do with very specific things that happened to me as a baby and a young child. But I wasn't really healing. I didn't heal everything. I just healed they helped me heal the most pressing issues, which were those 2 issues, which had been burning in my chest for almost 10 years, creating all sorts of negative and crazy situations, which I went on many self-destructive rides, you might say, or trips, or doing insane things. And basically feeling like worse and worse because of these issues coming up over a decade, coming up more and more. I see now that what happened to me was that when I reached the higher 500 levels on the scale of consciousness, I was in complete bliss, and Kundalini energies and all that was playing out for 2 years or so after that, and I was completely blissed out. I was walking around like in nature and just felt like I was almost on acid, because I could peek into the 4D blending reality and all that, and I was like, wow, I felt like, okay, the next step now has to be real full enlightenment, but that was not really the case. Instead, as these blissful Kundalini energies sort of calmed down after a couple of years, what was left was my core issues, which I didn't even know what was, because nobody teaches that. So those core issues became exposed after the blissfulness went away. So it became increasingly difficult to be around people, because every person is, and especially lower level people, are basically organic portals in which you know, if you have something that you're trying to protect inside yourself, you will be attacked, because protectiveness basically invites attack. And when you have this like an open wound of core issues in your chest, and it's not covered up by, like it normally would, because normally these core woundings are covered up by layers upon layers of mind stuff. But now I felt like they were like, I had like an open wound in my chest, and I was walking around like an open target, and I just felt like I didn't feel safe around anybody, because you can sense that everybody is like a portal in which attacks can come through from the mass negative ego or whatever. And being around people, having to go to jobs and whatnot, and be around very unconscious people, it felt horrible, because you're high level, super sensitive, super aware of everything, and at the same time you have this massive wounding that can be touched and attacked at a moment's notice, basically, and people don't even know that they're doing it. But I didn't know I had those issues. I thought it was me taking on other people's issues. That's why I felt bad around people. But I see now that that's obviously not the case. I had these massive woundings in my chest, in my core, surrounding the core of my being, basically. And that's the core issues, the negative ego. It's the inflamed core of the personality structure. And it became worse and worse as the years passed by, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't understand what it was, because no teachers talk about this much. They mention the dark night of the soul sometimes, so that lasts for a little bit maybe, and then they get enlightened. But I don't think too many teachers have been through 10 years of a dark night of the soul that lasts for 10 years, getting increasingly worse, like I had to go through. So what ended up happening was obviously that I finally got assistance from the higher mind ETs as this whole thing came to a head. Basically, I was getting into a very self-destructive drinking and doing crazy stuff for a while, until they sort of intervened and assisted me in healing all that, or at least heal the 2 most pressing issues. But I still had, as I see now, I realize now in retrospect, I still had many layers of what you can call the default core issues. Even if you don't have any particular stuff from your parents, like they hit you or did something as to you as a kid, that creates specific core issues. But everybody still have, even with perfect parents, you still have default core issues. And these default core issues is basically a clusterfuck of all sorts of negative energies. Some of which come from, some of these negative energies come from the fact that you're a sensitive, completely innocent being who come from heaven, like you come from 5D unconditional love into the mother's womb, which is kind of a gateway or a halfway between the physical and the oceanic oneness you get in the heavenly states in the 5D before you incarnate, right? So then you're born into a very hostile or very let's put it this way, less than unconditionally loving mass consciousness environment. And just that alone, that trauma alone, creates the inflammation and the core separation and the core of your being, which becomes the innermost layer of your personality and basically the foundation for the negative ego. So even if you have everything perfect, being born into a reality like this with full of negativity in the mass consciousness will create a core trauma like that, no matter what. And that's the core separation, or you might call it the original sin, which becomes the core issues, or the innermost layer of your core issues. And then you might have abuse or other things that happen to you on top of that. And as if that wasn't enough, you also will, as a young baby, you will also attract and absorb your parents, at least partly a part of your parents' core issues, which can be big fears that they are holding on to and whatnot. So that becomes part of the whole mess. And in addition to that, you are also taking on core issue energies from simultaneous incarnations that your higher mind is connecting to. So you're getting gifts, obviously talents and gifts from simultaneous incarnations from different times, both past, future, and present. And you're also taking on karma from karmic energies from these connections. So that whole clusterfuck becomes the core of your negative ego. It becomes the inflamed center or artificial and inflamed center of your personality, which is off center for the true center, because the true center is pure beingness. So this off center negative ego is basically swarming around the true center like black goo around a projector lamp, you might say, and it casts a shadow through the whole personality structure, and which again becomes manifested in your life like karma and catalyst and challenges you have to take on and overcome to get back and into yourself and eventually heal all that and cleanse out the whole inner Lucifer, inner totalitarian system, inner negative ego. So what I've been doing for the last 2 years after I healed my 2 specific core issues has basically been facing layers upon layers of this black goo negativity, all these energies, clusterfuck that has been basically they helped me pull the plug. So now it's been unraveling since that point, and it's been ups and downs, not as bad as it used to be before they helped me, but still there has been ups and downs and a lot of negativity. And I've been waking up a lot, almost every night. I have trouble sleeping, wake up 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And that's usually, I have to lie there like for maybe 1 hour more and just face all sorts of stuff that goes on and comes up, because then the higher mind knows I cannot escape, because I'm trying to sleep. So I'm, I can't really drink, I can't really go for a swim or go for a jog or whatever, to escape whatever comes up. So it's a good way. So he basically, I get woken up almost every night for a long time now, and I've lacked sleep a lot because of that too. So it's kind of rough because you don't feel good if you don't have enough sleep, right? So, but anyway, it's been quite intense, and but now finally it looks like I've been through now for 2 years, and the last couple of weeks something has changed. Because there used to be so many ups and downs, like some days I would wake up and I feel pretty good because maybe I finally had a good night's sleep with not waking up, and then many other nights or mornings I would wake up and I just knew from the moment I wake up that this is going to be a tough day. Like I'm feeling kind of tired. I feel a lot of negativity in my system, trying to cleanse it out, and it's going to be a day of cleansing and not feeling very good. But now, lately, in the last couple of maybe 2-3 weeks, things have stabilized in a much more better way. Like I wake up every morning, and even if I don't sleep as good as I want to, I still feel kind of good, and still, it's just everything is more stable. The ups and downs seems to be fading out a lot more now, and I really hope so, and I kind of see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel finally, and I mean, it's like a lot of stuff has just been put in the past, and now it's been healed and cleansed, and I can see a much better reality emerge from it, in my personal life, basically. But I could be just be getting a break for a while, and then it starts again. I don't know. It's probably not completely finished, but at least I hope and I think that, after 2 years of integrating like that every day almost, that now it's finally time to get to feel a little bit good again, because it's been many years of not feeling too good, despite having many fun things too and good things happening in life. It's even worse when you have like good things happen in your life on the outside, but you still feel like shit on the inside because you have all these you're in the middle of the core issue battle, or so that makes it feel even worse, because you feel like your life is being wasted, because this should have been really fun. Other people are having fun here, this is good things are happening, but I can't enjoy it because I'm going through hell, and I can't be around other people almost, because it's just horrible. So I feel like I wasted my life away because I should be having fun like other people, but not but I couldn't be part of that. I could go through the motions and be there, but not really. It didn't really work. So really, I hope that all this is worth it in the end, and I think it will be. But it's been a rough ride, and I mean, it's like, if it would be easier if teachers actually talked about this, but I guess so many teachers out in the history of enlightened teachers in the history of this planet, they usually just come here from higher levels themselves, and they're not really here to learn any lessons or to, they're just here to teach and help and assist people. So they usually don't have to go through all that many challenges. Of course, it's impossible to not go through anything when you come down to a realm like this with so much negativity. But most of the time, if you look at these famous teachers in history, they usually just live their life, and at some point they get enlightened and they do their thing. They are helping people and they're assisting people. So there isn't too much information talking about what I have to go through. I've with 10 years of Dark Night of the Soul and healing core issues like that. That's kind of unique. Dark Night of the Soul has been mentioned by teachers many times, but it usually I think they just have to heal the default core issue, the separation, inflammation, original contraction, or whatever I want to call it. That's what the Dark Night of the Soul usually means for most enlightened teachers who have gone through it. They had a period where a lot of darkness came up, and they healed it, and boom, they got enlightened after that. but I don't think they reflected too much on it because it didn't last for that long. For me, when it lasts for 10 years, you kind of get interested in what is hell is going on and what is this thing. But on the good side of is that I can, I become capable of talking about it in a very detailed way, which I have been doing in many videos on this channel, and I think the information is very useful for people who will have to go through similar things, not necessarily 10 years, not necessarily as bad as I did. But if I knew what was going on and had a context to place it into, I would definitely probably have, handled it differently and less in a less volatile way and a less crazy way. But I had no context. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I thought I was bound for enlightenment when I went into the high 500s. I thought that was next. This bliss was leading into, full enlightenment at some point. I didn't think it would lead into years of disease and crazy drinking and all sorts of stuff that lasted for a decade. And I definitely didn't think I needed alien interventions to heal it or to get rid of it. But they told me that millions of people will need to go through the same, and that's, hopefully will happen sooner rather than later, so we can get this show on the road and we can actually start to unravel the whole mass consciousness and start to get the event and upgrade the mass consciousness to unconditional love and make everything easier for everybody. Because basically we as light workers, or whatever you want to call it, we are the ones who have to hit the barbed wire first, like in a war, and it makes it easier for people to come after, but it's for us, it's the roughest job. But at least you're not going to die on the barbed wire like a soldier. You're going to actually benefit from it in the end, but it's not the most fun job always to be the one who run into the barbed wire first. Although you can say that people have done that for a while already, and like generations before us, but I think it will be worth it when we see the results and we see everything unravel and a brand new world will emerge from it.